Hi, I'm Chris Hedges, author of Wages of Rebellion, The Moral Imperative of Revolt, a book that argues that significant reform will never come within the traditional mechanisms of power, including the two parties. And I'm joined today by Gail McLaughlin, the former mayor of Richmond, California, a prominent member of the Green Party. She's currently a council person. She was mayor from 2007 to 2015, as well as Dr. Jill Stein, who was the Green Party presidential candidate in the last election, who I voted for, and is running again in this election. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
I think, though, the problem is that if people don't understand how power works, how corporate power functions, no matter what their proclivities may be, they still remain hostage to that power. And that's been one of the frustrations that I've had. It was, if you understood how the corporate state worked, then you would have never fallen for Barack Obama or the way people have fallen for Bernie Sanders or anyone else. And because we live in a kind of post-literate society, the irony is that the information is all accessible, not on the internet, but it is accessible. If you read Sheldon Wolin, our greatest living political philosopher without question, or others. And I think that kind of educational aspect for all radical movements is key, and it has nothing to do with graduating from high school or going to college, because if you look back at the old anarchist movements which built its base around garment workers and dock workers, none of these people had formal education, but like when you read Emma Goldman's autobiography, they're working 10 hours a day in some sweatshop and then all going off to, read Leibniz or somebody. And I do think that that's an important part, and it has nothing to do with higher education. In fact, having gone to these schools, they're probably more of an impediment to understanding than they are actually. And when people can begin to grasp all the interconnectedness of the forces that keep them repressed, then it makes them much more astute as political activists. And I think it finally makes it much easier to fight.
Absolutely, and certainly both things have to happen. It's often, I find in my experience as kind of a pragmatist coming out of medicine, and providing healthcare, it's easy to engage people at the point of crisis, and right now an awful lot of people are in crisis, and by luck or whatever, the political establishment is not really addressing the crisis. So you may have kind of folks who are offering hope and change, but not really at the level that, they're not going to get rid of the debt, and they're not saying that they'll get rid of the debt. They're not saying that everyone has a right to a job and that they will provide those jobs. So there are kind of more superficial ways to connect, but you're absolutely right that in order to, all you can do is make that connection, but if you in order to maintain it, you do have to do that deeper political education.
That's true, but the problem is if you have a depoliticized population, yes, that is a breeding ground for fascism. Because and that's what we're seeing. So the people who are attracted to the Trumps of the world go to these rallies with the same economic distress and community breakdown, all of the same, but because they are in essence depoliticized, their frustration and despair and anger is successfully directed, as fascist movements always do, to the vulnerable.
That's right.
Homosexuals, Muslims,
immigrants,
undocumented workers, feminists, liberals, intellectuals. And I think that is a very virulent, powerful, and frightening strain in American society. And what makes it so disturbing is that the latent violence that it carries within it. America is a very violent culture. And I worry that if we, I mean, I think everything you say is true, and that this kind of personal distress drives people to ask questions. But because the airwaves and the media, PBS has been destroyed on purpose, NPR has been destroyed on purpose. I mean, the 10th anniversary of the Iraq War, they were interviewing Wolfowitz reverentially. Yeah, and that illiteracy frightens me very, very much.
I couldn't agree that we have every reason to be very frightened about where we are. And I think, as I've read in one of your recent articles, you yourself, have noted that in order to combat, the lure of fascism now, we need to have a very loud voice for the alternative, for a progressive and humanistic alternative. And in a way, I see our campaign as really working to fulfill that role. I think the enthusiasm around Bernie Sanders' campaign certainly reflects that many people are ready to go in that direction, as they did with Barack Obama too, and they were betrayed. And I think a lot is going to play out now as to whether we can lift up an alternative that won't be betrayed because it's inside of a corporate party, which is what has happened repeatedly over the years, over the decades.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the things that helps people to really become more in touch with themselves and their own interest, because I think we do have a certain Stockholm syndrome going on, where people are, just thinking that the corporate culture is that's what defines us, and that's our interest, and is to put that separation between people and corporations. We do that in Richmond on a local level. We have our own 1%er in the Chevron Richmond refinery, so we reach those authentic communications with people by really talking to them one-on-one before Chevron's attack campaign hits out in their mailers and such, and so people are well aware that things are coming. We know in 2016 for the candidates that'll be running, that the RPA will be running, we know that Chevron will try new tactics. They don't give up. So we're out there furthering the break in the corporate culture, and so I think it's a real problem in terms of building that heart-to-heart relationship and breaking through that kind of veil that people have been fed, have been conditioned, false consciousness, if you will, that people have in growing up in this culture. And so we have to break through it and showcase, that our interests, what we believe down deep, and we all believe it. We know what our interests are. We've just been fed that there's something else. So you have to break through to the authentic individual and, share with them that political ideology that the corporations are doing this to us. We do it one-on-one on a local level. I think art plays the role, again, that role of spirit to spirit, if you will, human spirit to human spirit, that universality that in some ways political ideology cannot do, art can do. That's why I think it goes hand in hand, but political ideology is equally as important. And history, of course, is culture, and we have to know our history. And we grow from it, and we grow not only in our relationship to ourselves, but in our relationship to others and in our relationship to our world. So there's a lot of psychological breakthrough, I guess, that we have to do.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I wish you both tremendous success, two of the very few political figures in America I would vote for.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.